Next on the news.
We pray also for a certain kind of peace, a peace with the great respect for human life.
As the abortion debate rages, Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan urging Catholics to pray for human life during his message for the Feast of Our Lady of Fatima. This after the Senate fails to advance a bill to make access to abortion a federal law. The Vatican expressing concern after the arrest of Archbishop Emeritus Joseph Zen in Hong Kong. Plus,
with no real plan, and we were very nervous and thinking, okay, how do we do this?
The owner of a historic castle in Ireland opens it up to refugees from the war in Ukraine. I'm Christine Persichetti. This special edition of Currents News starts right now. It was a day of prayer for Catholics around the country, praying that the Supreme Court will indeed overturn Roe v. Wade. We won't know for sure until next month, but after the leaked draft opinion, Democratic lawmakers tried to make the right to an abortion a federal law. They failed. Protests continue around the country as the fate of Roe v. Wade hangs in the balance. On Wednesday, the U.S. Senate rejected a bill aimed at preserving access to abortion nationwide.
The motion is not agreed to.
As expected, all Republicans and one Democrat, Senator Joe Manchin, opposed the bill. U.S. bishops were relieved, saying in a statement, more than 60 million unborn children have already lost their lives to abortion, and countless women suffer from the physical and emotional trauma of abortion. This radical bill would add millions more to that tragic toll. 3 Republicans had proposed a narrower bill that wouldn't force doctors to perform abortions if it goes against their beliefs.
Show unto us the blessed fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
If the Supreme Court strikes down Roe v. Wade, as the leaked draft opinion suggests, abortion rights would be left to individual states. If that happens, the landscape of abortion access will become a sporadic patchwork of different laws. This is what the country would look like, according to an analysis by the Guttmacher Institute, a group supporting abortion rights. 16 states and the District of Columbia have laws protecting abortion rights, but at least 26 states are ready or will likely move to outlaw abortion access. 13 of those states have so-called trigger laws designed to immediately ban abortions if Roe v. Wade is overturned.
I would love for there to be all states where abortion didn't exist in our country. I realize that's not where we're headed.
Theresa Sadler is the director of an East Texas clinic offering counseling and medical services to pregnant women and alternatives to abortion. She says she was inspired to do this work because when she was 19, she had an abortion, a choice she regrets. Last year, Texas lawmakers passed a law banning abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy.
What we see is a lot of our women, once that is decided to be illegal, it goes off the table for them. They're rule followers, for lack of a better word. So if abortion's not an option, it isn't an option in her head.
The Supreme Court justices met Thursday for the first time since that unprecedented leak. This as an internal investigation into the source of the leak is now underway. New York Attorney General Letitia James unveiled a bill to expand and protect access to abortions in the state.
And we are taking action today to make sure that remains true here in New York, both for New Yorkers and for people living in states that are poised to ban abortions.
James is helping to spearhead the legislation called the Reproductive Freedom and Equity Program. Under the proposal, $50 million in state funds will be funneled to abortion providers across New York. And on top of that, New York's governor set aside an additional $35 million. $25 million will support abortion providers in the state, and another $10 will boost security at the centers. Governor Kathy Hochul said she doesn't need new money for this. It'll come from tax dollars already in the state's emergency health fund. The New York State Catholic Conference is calling this a grave mistake and an insult to pro-life New Yorkers, asking in part, when will New York lawmakers begin to dedicate even a fraction of their rhetoric and policies to supporting women who want and need the resources to keep their babies?
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Catholics from across the country praying the rosary in light of the leaked Supreme Court opinion. USCCB President Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles and pro-life chair Archbishop William Lori of Baltimore urged the faithful to pray. The prayers are for the U.S. and each government branch that Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey will be overturned. The Bishop of Brooklyn, Robert Brennan, is also encouraging you to join in the rosary during his message for the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima.
We pray for respect for life in our nation, for a transformation of hearts and minds, and for our commitment to work with women and with families in time of need. Let's turn together, let's join together in solidarity and in prayer.
You can watch Bishop Brennan's full message on thetablet.org. Bishop Brennan also joined the bishops of New York in a big pro-life push. In a new statement just out, the bishops say they want to work towards a New York that even if abortion is legal, the procedure itself is unthinkable. Here is some of what they envision. A New York where a woman doesn't feel like she has no choice but to abort, where if a woman does get an abortion, her pain is acknowledged and she's given the services she needs to heal, where access to quality prenatal care and healthy birth outcomes is available no matter who or where you are, where quality child care is affordable and accessible for all, where religious organizations can provide needed services to pregnant women and moms while remaining true to the tenets of their faith. On top of all that, the bishops reaffirmed a pledge that was first made by the late Cardinal John O'Connor in the 1980s. Any woman, regardless of age, religious belief or affiliation, marital status or immigration status, who is pregnant and in need, can come to the Catholic Church, and we will give you the services and supports you need to carry your baby to term, regardless of your ability to pay. Furthermore, we will not abandon you and your baby after delivery, but rather we will see to it that you have the resources that you and your child both need and deserve. They're asking every parish, Catholic charities program, Catholic health facility, Catholic school, and every religious community to take part in this pastoral effort. And in keeping with that effort, the bishops have launched a new pregnancy resources page. Just go to nyscatholic.org/help for moms. This page will be continually updated with new resources. And again, to read the bishop's full statement, just go to thetablet.org and we'll have that plus all the information on resources for you there. As the Supreme Court fight over abortion continues, the Food and Drug Administration is working around the clock to help moms of newborns and infants. Baby formula continues to be in short supply nationwide, prompting action from the White House and 3 major retailers. Isabel Rosales has more.
Baby formula is getting harder and harder to find. Analysts say supply chain challenges, inflation, and product recalls are all preventing formula from hitting store shelves. And the FDA is paying close attention as it works with manufacturers to safely ramp up production.
We're very concerned about it and understand that it should be a concern to moms and dads and grandparents like me. We want this to get fixed.
New data from Data Assembly shows 40% of baby formula brands are out of stock, a dramatic rise from the first half of 2021, when that rate was between 2 and 8%. The new data also shows in these 6 states, Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, Missouri, Texas, and Tennessee, more than half of baby formula was completely sold out during the last week of April. The situation has parents feeling helpless.
There's no answer. What are we supposed to do if we can't find the formula?
The supply is so low that CVS, Walgreens, and Target are limiting purchases. Parents say those limits are making things even harder.
I'm starting to hoard. I'm starting to scour. We're going further out. I'm going to areas where I know that there's a low population. What am I doing? You know, it's unreal.
Experts urge parents to be flexible and speak to their pediatricians about options, especially if they have kids with severe allergies that require special formulas.
We want to make sure that families do not get desperate and do things like start making formulas at home or buying formulas that are not properly vetted by the FDA.
I'm Isabel Rosales.
Gas prices reaching new highs in the U.S., especially in parts of New York and New Jersey, where they're hitting new records. As of Friday, the analysts at GasBuddy.com estimate the national average for a gallon of gas is $4.45. That's up 28 cents compared to the start of the month. And it's soaring in New York City. The average price for a gallon in the Big Apple is now $4.74. More now on the inflation situation. A much anticipated report on consumer prices giving some mixed messages. The peak may be behind us, but that means little to millions of Americans who are still facing those eye-popping prices at the pump, in grocery stores, and at car dealerships. Gloria Pazmino has the breakdown of the new numbers and looks at what, if anything, the government is doing to help.
A bit of a reprieve, at least for now. The U.S. inflation rate declined for the first time since August. And while prices still increased, it's happening at a slower pace than in previous months.
I'm a little hesitant to call it good news because we don't know, of course, where it's going to go in the next few months.
According to new Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers released Wednesday, the consumer price index was up 8.3% in the 12 months ended in April, a decrease from the 8.5% recorded in March, which marked the highest inflation level in more than 40 years. The numbers suggest the inflation peak could be behind us, but major global events continue to shake up the economy.
Of course, the war in the Ukraine that Putin is waging is having an effect on energy prices in particular.
That means Americans may not feel an improvement in their wallets just yet. Housing, food, and plane tickets saw some of the steepest price increases.
Gas prices are higher today than they were a few weeks ago. Families are paying over $150 in many cases to fill their vehicle, and they're angry about it.
America's fighting on two fronts. At home, it's inflation and rising prices.
The pressures that have kept inflation rising for months are still strong, a problem for American households already strapped for cash. In New York, Gloria Pazmino, Current News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. The former Archbishop of Hong Kong, Cardinal Joseph Zen, has been released from jail. The reaction from Catholics and world leaders. And we sat down with the Director of Outreach for Aid to the Church in Need to take an in-depth look at the challenges Christians are facing in China. Plus, Pope Francis makes due on his promise to Indigenous Canadians. The details on when he visits the Great White North when we return. He's been a friend of the Diocese of Brooklyn. Here's Cardinal Joseph Zen visiting a church in Flushing, Queens back in 2020. But now all eyes are on the Vatican after the arrest of the retired Archbishop of Hong Kong. The 90-year-old was detained by Hong Kong's national security on Wednesday for his support of pro-democracy protests. The State Department has condemned Zen's arrest and vowed to continue to stand with the people of Hong Kong.
Can endure any kind of difficult situation.
That was Cardinal Joseph Zen in Queens back in 2020, talking about the pandemic that was just taking hold. Now, the 90-year-old is enduring a different difficult situation after his arrest by police in Hong Kong on Wednesday. The charge, collusion with foreign forces in connection with his role in a humanitarian relief fund that provides legal assistance to protesters arrested in 2019 demonstrations. In 2020, a new security law was implemented in Hong Kong that made participating in or even supporting the pro-democracy movement a crime. Hong Kong's Archbishop Emeritus has been a very public supporter of pro-democracy and independence protests. He spoke out about it after that mass at St. Michael's.
We are in a great danger to become just one like any city in China. What is happening is simply foolish. We hope God may wake them up.
Cardinal Zen has also been critical of religious persecution in communist China and of the Vatican's approach to it, saying the Holy See must speak more clearly on religious liberty. This was Cardinal Zen standing up for the persecuted in 2013.
La comunità, diciamo, underground, soffrono, sentono di essere un po' abbandonata.
After the security law went into effect, the cardinal had said he was prepared to suffer arrest and trials. He posted this on Facebook: "If right and proper words were considered against their law, I will endure all the suing, trials, and arrests. Numerous predecessors have endured similarly." The cardinal was released on bail after being held for several hours. He returned to his home with the Hong Kong Salesians after leaving the police station. The Diocese of Hong Kong released a statement about the arrest, saying in part, "We urge the Hong Kong police and the judicial authorities to handle Cardinal Zen's case in accordance with justice, taking into consideration our concrete human situation." The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops also released a statement saying in part, the alarming news of the May 11th arrest in Hong Kong of Cardinal Joseph Zen due to his past role in administering a humanitarian fund for protesters indicates the downward trend in respect for fundamental freedoms and human rights in Hong Kong. Soon after the news broke, Matteo Bruni, the spokesman for the Vatican, said the Holy See was following the developments with extreme attention. To learn more about the current situation in Hong Kong, I spoke with Ed Clancy, the director of outreach for Aid to the Church in Need, earlier this week. And he said the Chinese government had clear motivations behind the arrest of Cardinal Zen.
They're watching everyone, and anyone can fall prey to this kind of action. So It's a definite statement.
And, you know, authorities in China usually make arrests under the cloak of secrecy. This one was very public, and now we're hearing that the cardinal was released on bail. Do you think this was just an intimidation tactic?
I don't think it's just an intimidation tactic. I think obviously it has that part of it, I think, but also it is about control. It is about telling the people in charge of the church, we're here at all times, and we can do this at any time that we want.
All right, as we said, we've heard from the Vatican that they're watching this situation closely. What do you expect from the Holy See now?
Well, the Holy See has to operate in a different level than any of us. So, you know, there's a natural tension that exists between diocese and the Holy See. So there's different things going on at different levels, and diplomacy with China is a different creature. So there's a lot of talk, a lot of discussions that go on without our knowledge, and those will continue. It's a very delicate situation.
And the response from the Vatican previously, the Cardinal has spoken out against that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the important things to understand about Cardinal Zen is maybe his last tweet. He said that I am truly convinced that nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. Not any other creature, neither death nor life. So you have in Cardinal Zen a man who's convicted completely to the service of the church there. And as I said, it's a different dynamic at the diocesan level than at the Vatican level. So he's got to operate in a sense of putting a dynamic tension on the relationship with both the government and with the Holy See.
Right. So now do you think after this arrest, this will cause even more passionate protests and more pushes by the underground Catholics in the country? You know, does this kind of empower the people there?
I think there's always the example of Tertullian in that the blood of the martyrs are the seeds of the faith, that sense of that martyrdom. And this is what, you know, would be a white martyrdom, you know, sacrifice, but not necessarily death or outright suffering. I think there will be an increase of this idea of we're in this for the long haul. We have to understand that there may be as many as 300 million underground Christians and as many as 100 million underground Catholics in China. So that's an extraordinary number, and this is something that I think the Chinese government does not want to lose control of.
And China is one of the worst places to live if you are a Catholic, right?
It probably would be, yeah. You know, it's very controlled what they do, what's said. I mean, they use biorecognition, and they know everyone and where they are at all times. They target 39 points on your face and features, and even the pattern of your walking.
Again, that was Ed Clancy, the Director of Outreach for Aid to the Church in Need. It is confirmed Pope Francis will be making a trip to Canada in July. According to the Holy See's press office, the Holy Father will travel to Edmonton, Quebec City, and the capital of Nunavut, the country's most northern region, from July 24th to the 30th. Pope Francis promised to visit the Great White North after meeting with representatives of Canada's Indigenous tribes in April, many of whom were survivors of Catholic-run residential schools established to educate and forcefully assimilate Indigenous children. The news of those Canadian boarding schools and the mass burial of Indigenous kids eventually led to an American investigation. And now a new report by the Interior Department says more than 500 American Indian children died at U.S. boarding schools, and that number is expected to grow. The report catalogs the conditions of more than 400 boarding schools between 1819 and 1969. A second report will cover burial sites at those schools, as well as the federal government's investment in them and the impacts they had on Indigenous communities. Still to come on Currents News, they are the wives of brave Ukrainian soldiers. Next, how they turned to Pope Francis asking for help for their safe evacuation. And the owners of a castle in Ireland reaching out to help a special group of refugees from the war-torn nation. A somber moment at the Vatican as Pope Francis comforts the wives of 2 Ukrainian soldiers at the end of his general audience Wednesday. Their husbands are just 2 of the 500 soldiers defending a steel plant in Mariupol, the city's last holdout against Russian forces. The women begged for the Holy Father's help to create humanitarian corridors so they can escape. The Pope in turn reassured them with his prayers. That meeting with the Holy Father was just a stop for the 2 wives as they were making their way to Germany. They're joining the 6 million people who have left Ukraine in a growing refugee crisis. In Europe, Ireland is taking in one of the largest amounts of migrants fleeing the war, so much so that the country is getting creative with resources. Donnie O'Sullivan reports on the Irish welcome a special group of refugees received.
This 15th century castle on Ireland's west coast is about as far from Ukraine as you can get in Europe. But for a group of Ukrainian families fleeing the war, it's now home.
It's very amazing living in a castle. I'm never dream about what I can live in castle in future, but now I live with my 2 boys, with my family.
The Great Hall. The Great Hall. This is where we have all our celebrations and big dinners.
The owner, Barry Hawkian, didn't have to think long about travelling to Poland to offer up his castle to refugees.
We decided that we had to do something, and we had no real plan, and we were very nervous, thinking, okay, how do we do this? And it's pretty simple. You get your credit card out, you book a flight, and you fly to Poland.
Per capita, the country of 5 million people has taken in more Ukrainian refugees than many of its neighbours in Western Europe. The government says more than 27,000 have arrived so far. Meanwhile, Ireland's closest neighbour, the United Kingdom, has had roughly the same number of refugees arrive, despite having a population more than 13 times the size. But not all refugees in Ireland have received the royal treatment. The government has warned that resources are stretched.
Look, it's not all ideal. It's not all the kind of the gold standard accommodation that we'd like. But this is a crisis situation. Most people are in hotels. Some people are in more basic accommodation. And yes, it is getting more difficult, particularly as it's clear now that this war isn't going to end anytime soon.
Authorities have set up emergency camp beds in Arena in Cork. They also plan to repurpose student halls, holiday homes and former convents. Former asylum seeker Lucky Kambule, originally from South Africa, shared a room in a government-run facility for years, living in limbo until his papers were processed. He now campaigns for better conditions for all asylum seekers.
It showed that all along we were right to say that the government is capable of treating us better.
Unlike other asylum seekers, Ukrainian refugees were immediately granted the right to work and received welfare payments in Ireland. A lack of red tape also enabled thousands of Ukrainian children to be enrolled quickly in Irish schools.
They had everything sorted for these guys inside 2 hours. It was real, the way I'm described, Céad Míle Fáilte. It was quite incredible. It makes you really proud to be Irish.
Donnie O'Sullivan, Galway.
No shortage of Irish pride here. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.